Hello everyone, welcome to our fifth Art of Nursing webinar. This time we are focusing on the silenced voices. We're just letting the people who are arriving into our space. And as you're all joining, I would love to say that the RCN Libraries and Museum Service is supporting this, and in partnership with the Foundation of Nursing Studies, where I am a trustee, we are advocating for the art of nursing alongside the science of nursing and this idea of the artful intelligence in the world alongside artificial intelligence. You'll hear more about that in webinars to come. We have an amazing 4 speakers today in our fireside chat who are really going to share their examples of how they are connecting with communities who nurses find difficult to reach, but not just nurses, the whole of our system. We have on the session today voices of nurse academia, OT, the Arts Council, art therapy, evaluation, authorship activists, ranging from across the care continuum and the life course, from young people right through. So we are really representative of our whole public, but I don't want to take up any more of your time, and I ask the speakers to introduce themselves, because this kind of way really starts to place their work and the idea of silenced voices into the core, rather than me taking their voice from them. So it is now 13:02. Have anyone in the box? No. So we have Marie, Jemma, Val and Christina speaking with us today. I'm Marion Lynch, and Sarah is here at the RCN. So to start with, and I'm very excited about this, I would like to pass over to our first nurse in the room, Marie Clancy, Dr. Marie Clancy, who has speaking to us from Exeter. Over to you, Marie.
Thank you very much, Marion, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. Welcome, everybody. So my name is Marie Clancy. I'm a children's nurse by background, and have worked in children's palliative care and oncology most of my clinical career. I went into nurse academia about 15 years ago, and started thinking about what I would do for my PhD topic, and looked at areas where I thought there was most need. I didn't want to do a PhD that was purely theoretical. I did want to do one that had some practical implications for patients. So working in children's palliative care at the time, I realised that when refugee and asylum seeker families came into our service, it was very difficult, and their voices were seldom heard or heard fully. And that maybe that was an area that I could study. So my PhD was all about refugee and asylum seeker families in the West Midlands, as that's where I was working at the time. And when I came to look at how I was going to study this population and help people to speak, and obviously for me to hear what they wanted to tell me about their care experiences, I did start to think about traditional methods, interviews, focus groups. What could I do to help people tell me about what they'd experienced? And I realised that actually they would probably only take me so far, and that a lot of these families didn't have English as their first language, which was obviously quite a barrier for them and for me. I've always written poetry myself, probably from about 9, when I was at school and got into a book in the class where they published our poems, and got very excited about that. And I'd always written poetry throughout my nursing career to help me when I had a tough case, when a family had really touched me and I didn't quite know where to put the experience, because it can be quite burdensome to share that with everybody. And obviously you've got the confidential element as well. So I would write about it poetically. And I thought, I wonder if I could bring some of this poetry into my research. Obviously, poetry is a worldwide aspect of arts and culture that's commonly shared by lots of different people. And obviously lots of different faiths and spiritualities use poetry to share that element of their lives as well. My PhD supervisors were a bit more skeptical and said, how are you going to do this with people who don't speak English? But I was quite determined that I was going to try and do this and open up this voice through poetic means. But I also wanted to allow the children to speak for themselves as well. So I used a method called draw and talk, where I had an interview. It was mostly of siblings of children with palliative care needs, and asked them to draw little aspects of their experiences. So one of the siblings drew his brother in a bed, and the bed was huge in the room. And then I had the opportunity to say to him, you know, this is a lovely picture, and I can see your brother's in the bed, and that's you, isn't it? But why is the bed so big? And he talked to me about the bed being so big because it was always in the way. It was a massive boundary, a barrier to him being able to reach his brother. His brother was often hooked up to chemotherapy and other infusions in that bed, and it meant his brother was tied to the bed, as well as him not really being able to get into the bed with him. So it was another way of us kind of trying to reach more of the intricacies of his experience and what had impacted that family and their care. The poetry, I used a few different methods. Initially, I asked participants if they were able to write poetry themselves about their experiences. And one family from Syria had written a poem already about their son who died as a memorial to him. And it was set to music. It was in Arabic. It was absolutely beautiful. But obviously, I couldn't read that, not being able to speak Arabic myself. So they had that translated for me. And then we had another interview where we sat down and they went through the translation of that poem with me, and told me all about what that meant, what their son meant to them. It was a huge amount about their Muslim faith and how that impacted their healthcare decision making, which obviously was very, very interesting to me. It's an area that's very difficult to reach and understand, I think, for us as nurses, and often difficult for families to share. And so that through that poem, it was quite an interesting way to do that. And we managed to do that in quite a lot of detail. So, for example, in that poem, the father had used the word humility, and the word didn't seem to really fit very well with the sentence. And I thought maybe this is a translation issue. And when I asked the dad and said, you know, this word seems a bit, you know, it's jarring for me, I can't quite understand why that word is there. He was then able to tell me exactly why that word was there and what that meant to be humble in front of God, and to put your needs to the background, so to speak. So we had a very, very in-depth conversation about that, which I honestly think we would not have had it not been for that poetic means of communicating. Obviously, some of my participants weren't as comfortable writing poetry, and so I had a lot of advisory groups as part of my research. I had a refugee and asylum seeker association that were very kind to me and helped me with my interpretations. I also had some bereaved parents from the local hospice who supported me, and a youth advisory group from the local children's hospital who had shared the child voice. And what we did for some of the participants who didn't feel comfortable writing poems themselves is I used those advisory groups members' expertise, and we were able to look at interview transcripts together and write poems with their enhanced expertise of that particular area. So, for instance, one of the families, the dad who was bereaved from the hospice, said to me, I'll look at their account with you and we'll write something together. We were then able to share that with the family and say, does this match what you were trying to tell me? Is this, you know, a full account of what it was you were hoping to share? And they were able to tell us then where we'd got things right, perhaps where we got things a little bit muddled in the interpretation. And so that was another way of checking that my interpretations were right and that it wasn't too subjective or biased on my part. The family also really liked that mechanism because they said that helped them to see that I'd been really ethical and that I hadn't shared too many details about their child or their condition to identify them. So they were really pleased with that account because it helped them to understand what I would be sharing with audiences like yourselves. And then a third way that I shared some poetry was actually writing it myself and then sharing those accounts. That was mostly with healthcare professionals who I interviewed I wrote poetic accounts from their interviews and then sent it to them for them to check. And lots of people were very generous actually in sharing their thoughts with me. I have got a little website with some a bit more detail about that project, what we did, and some of those poems. And actually some of the advisory group members recite some of the poems in that website. So I will share the link to that for anybody who's interested. I have also been using arts-based methods with my student nurses, and I think we have another webinar in which there might be more opportunity to talk about that. So I think that is most of what I wanted to share with you, and to summarise really, just to say that I do think although arts-based methods can be more difficult in research certainly, and possibly in practice as well, I think they have huge amounts of benefit to the people that we are trying to support and advocate for and enable their voices to be heard wider. And for us too, as researchers, as clinicians, as nurses, who actually are really passionately determined to try and understand other people's perspectives, particularly when they differ from our own, and see and hear exactly what it is that we need to in order to facilitate need and meet those needs as adequately as we possibly can. So I think I'm up to time, Marion. I'm trying to be very good with time to not speak over other people, but I'll be really interested to take questions at the end from anyone who have any for me later. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Marie. And I'm desperate to now read those poems, because having worked in the 80s in as a general nurse in palliative care, there were moments where the words that were available just did not sum up what was being experienced, and the voices of it was young people with leukemia I looked after. They were able to articulate it in artful ways that a policy could never actually, or a competency framework could never, ever, ever hit home. So I'm really thrilled that the evidence base, as well as the emotional elements of nursing in this world, is coming through. And more of this work will be available in our next webinar and at the exhibition at the RCN. And speaking of those different perspectives and how we engage with the arts and how we work across professional silos that we've created ourselves, I would now like to introduce you to Jemma Channing, who is going to have some pictures to show you. Marie's was words, Jemma's is art, and we've got the visuals here. So for any of you who can see slides, do have a look. For those who don't, this will be recorded and be on the RCN YouTube website, so you can see what Jemma is sharing. And Jemma, I'm not going to silence your voice. I'd love you to say who you are and how come you're here and we know each other in this wonderful world we live in.
Thank you, Marion. Hi, everyone. My name's Jemma Channing. I'm Senior Manager for Creative Health and Change at Arts Council England, and I'm also an occupational therapist. So thank you for having me. My background is working in learning disabilities and mental health, and then I left the NHS and did some very fun work in museums, which I will share with you. So yeah, thank you for having me. I really do think that a key part of embedding arts and creativity in all parts of our lives is collaboration and working across our different disciplines. We've got so much more in common, I think, than we realise. So it's really, really exciting to be here. So I'm going to be a bit nostalgic, actually, and I'm not talking about my current role at Arts Council England. I'm talking about a previous role that I held at a wonderful museum called the Beanie House of Art and Knowledge in Canterbury. And one of the last programmes that I ran there, which was with people seeking asylum from Afghanistan. So if you're not familiar with the Beanie in Canterbury, which you probably aren't unless you happen to live in East Kent, so they've got a long history of supporting health and well-being through their collections. So this is a fragment of a chimney pot from Canterbury from our loan boxes. So I'll pop some links in the chat afterwards. But the Beanie, my role there was health and wellbeing coordinator, and it was really looking at how can we support groups that might find it difficult to access the museum, to access the collections. So museums have thousands of objects on show. We also have thousands of objects that are stuck in storage, not being seen by anyone. And there's also lots of people, whether they be in hospital, whether they be in prisons, whether they be in other environments that can't access the museum. So part of my job really was taking those collections to people that wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity. Can I have the next slide, please? So the program that I'm going to talk, this is a clanger for anyone that is not familiar. The clangers were made by Small Films and stop motion animation that was very popular a few decades ago. And they speak in a series of beeps. So explaining that to people that have never been to England before was quite challenging. So back in 2022, we were working with our local authority on an asylum seeker program that was really looking at how can we incorporate all the services in Canterbury to make sure that those families that are arriving get all the support they need. So we were working in partnership with housing officers, we were working in partnership with benefits people, education partners, health partners, and we were the cultural partner looking at how can we support these people that to feel integrated and welcomed into the community. So the museum is in the centre of town, and the temporary accommodation that the people were staying in was quite a way away from town. And we were also aware that these people have very recently undertaken quite traumatic journeys to arrive here. Not only do they not necessarily know that we exist, they might not know the way, but also they might not feel comfortable just yet leaving their accommodation and coming to a museum, or necessarily not see why going to a museum would feel like a priority when there's so many other different things going on. But we know the research shows us, and just from the experiences that museum goers have, that engaging with creative activities in the museum, but also engaging with the cultural history of Canterbury has a really positive impact on people's mood, on their sense of confidence, on their mental health, essentially, and also in being able to connect with other people, but being able to connect to the area. So all joking aside, clangers, as silly as they are, became one of the mechanisms that we worked with that refugee group. It was largely women and children that we worked with. So we're very lucky to have the Small Films collection at the Beanie and to use that to engage with families. Next slide, please. So I should point out as well that this program wasn't run just by myself at the Beanie. We have, I say we have as if I'm still there. I haven't been there for a while. We have and had a community learning and engagements team that supported on this. This was very much like a across the museum project with lots of people working on it. And I guess my role as health and wellbeing coordinator and as an occupational therapist was really to assess what are the barriers to these people being able to participate, and how can we overcome them so that they can experience all of those benefits of having a great creative workshop activity. So we went to their temporary accommodation and they were very accommodating. There was a very big kind of open shared area that was usually used for like meal times, and they would have daily meetings as well. One of the difficulties of being an asylum seeker is that people get moved around very quickly and with very short notice. So that area was a really important part of the community that they had within themselves, and they very warmly welcomed us into that. And we ran a series of different creative activities. So the first time we went, we took a very random array of things. Next slide, please. Because we didn't know them very well and we didn't have an opportunity to get to know them before we turned up. So these are some of the objects from our handling collection that we took down with us. So we've got a clanger, we've got that sort of black leather item at the front there is a water bottle that pilgrims would use when they were coming to Canterbury. I think that's the key to the city gate from many years ago. And there's some pilgrim badges on that hat as well, which people would collect from Canterbury when they came to visit. They would get different pin badges, sort of like ancient souvenirs, like we kind of get key rings or whatever now. Then you would get a pilgrim's badge. And we also bought some items from our like learning and education workshops as well, just to kind of have a play that first time and see what people liked, what people enjoyed. This session we did like a drawing that's still life, so we invited them to move things around and draw different things. And it was really lovely. It not only did it promote a lot of conversation between the families that were there, but they also spoke to us, which was wonderful. Spoke about what they liked, what was confusing, like why do you have these weird pink pigs that squeak? What's this all about? It was just a like getting to know each other session. Next slide, please. And then as the session, so we went once a week. As the sessions kind of progressed, we asked them what they wanted to do. So the sessions became defined by them and what interested them. So this is some planning that we did around putting on their own exhibition in the temporary accommodation that they were staying in. So this is building on the still life drawing that we did in the first one. We bought more stuff in. We went out in the grounds as well of the accommodation, and the people that ran the accommodation were happy for us to put on a mini exhibition. So people that participated attended, but also there were other families staying that wouldn't necessarily come to the workshop, so they still could experience what was going on. Next slide, please. So this is another example of that. So this was like a mosaic workshop. A lot of these families were from Afghanistan, and we knew that mosaicing was a big part of the culture and the art that they like to make. And it had very strong connections with Canterbury's history as a Roman city. The Romans also loved mosaicing. So that was a really lovely session. This is people kind of planning out what they wanted to make. So I'm aware that I'm at risk of going over my time. So what I wanted to say about this is there's opportunities with every museum has got loan boxes, or they are probably very happy to make up a loan box. So if you're working with different communities, you can take those loan boxes away from the museum. So we also used to lend these objects out to mental health wards, to prisons, care homes, places where people can't access the museum's collection. So the resource is there, and I would really recommend getting in touch with your local museums and having a conversation with them, because they would honestly be delighted to share the resources that they have. I'll pop some links about the Beanies program in the chat as well, so you can get to know them and what they're up to nowadays, and happy to take questions at the end as well. I think that's me done.
Thank you, Gemma. And I was the nurse in a Holiday Inn Express that hosted people from Afghanistan as they came over. And it was during COVID, and we couldn't even share a cup, never mind a piece of art and an artifact. So we and the people had half an hour to walk around the Holiday Inn Express for weeks. And what I really experienced there was the isolation that they experienced, and the anger, and all they had was their best dress, the women, the best dress, because that's all they could leave with. So to be able to create a sense of connection with a community and then move on would have resonated for their health going forward. The people I was with didn't have that opportunity. It's so heartening to hear that people in Canterbury did. And moving forward, we have so many communities, as you say now, who could connect with heritage. We just need to bring that heritage into their space. This is the social change we're trying to create here. So thank you for that. I'm going to move us on now, because this is a fireside chat, and it's a sort of a smorgasbord of experiences, to Val, who is talking about another area of our community, and communities with similar challenges. Val, I'm not going to silence you. Please tell us who you are, about this, and you've got 10 minutes or so, a little bit more if you want to say a bit more about you and this work.
That's lovely. I'm so pleased to be here. So I'm Val, and for many years I was the chief executive of the British Association of Art Therapists. And like Jemma, I am really passionate about partnerships, because I think our service users get the best of things when we can get away from our professional silos and work together. And we've got to learn a lot to learn from each other. So my research was actually working with Paintings in Hospitals, a charity that's involved in the project I'm going to talk about. And I was doing research on art therapy groups for work-related stress with staff in health and social care. And at the moment, I've moved to looking at the impact of fibromyalgia and chronic pain, and developing online art therapy groups for people who can't access services, because getting anywhere when you're in pain is really difficult. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. So because this was about silent voices, I just thought I'd really like to start with our service users. And I'm just going to show you a slide, which is, sorry, just this one, which is, sorry, that's not that one. There we go. Sorry, is it? So this is an artwork from the Adamson collection. I'm a trustee of this charity, and I always feel quite excited when I see this artwork, because it was done in the late 1940s by someone who was in one of these large psychiatric hospitals. And we don't know really who they were, we don't know why they were in there, but you weren't put in psychiatric hospitals back in those days just because you had mental health problems. You might be there because you had a child out of wedlock, or because you were gay or lesbian and you'd broken some societal norms. And I always look at this, this person made a few of these drawings, and they're all made on this cheap toilet paper from hospitals, using burnt matches, because they couldn't have access to art materials. And for me, it really embodies the resilience and the passion of our service users, and their need to connect with the sides of themselves that are intact, that are resilient, and that can really have humor through the arts in a way. And at the bottom, there's this thing about J.J. Began, sculptor, and an address. We don't, research was made, and we're not sure this is the right, that was this person's name. But I just thought this thing about claiming this identity as an artist, as a sculptor, was actually quite a lovely kind of rebellious act against being a service user, a patient in a hospital for quite a long time. So I just thought I'd start here, because I always find that so inspiring to see that determination, that rebellion that's embodied in this image. The project I just wanted to talk to you about today was called Art Meets Books, and it was a partnership work between curators from Paintings in Hospitals and artists and libraries and library staff and art therapy, myself. And it was really kind of built as a sort of as a work that would involve everybody and everybody's voices. So the innovative bit of it was that we actually tried to go where people were, and it was really interesting to kind of discover the role of public libraries. And I will put out a big shout out to public libraries, because they have become absolutely central in providing services have been taken away. So library staff now report that they see a lot more people with mental health issues, that, you know, there are warm hubs. They provide not only reading services, but they provide food banks, clothes banks and everything. So their role has become just so important socially. Whilst quite a few resources have been taken away from them, so staffing has been reduced and their role has been increased. But we were aware that sort of people were really, you know, the kind of people we wanted to connect to probably would go to public libraries. And then the curators from Paintings in Hospitals also started to do some really innovative work, Dominic Harper and Janet Bates, with doing some active outreach. And they had contacts with further education colleges. And they went and sort of talked to these people who had a lot of students who really wanted to connect with their communities but didn't know how to. So these were asylum seekers, migrants who were trying to learn English as a second language. And so that connection meant that all of a sudden there was a path to accessing something like public libraries that many of them didn't know about. So it was kind of building the networks from the ground up and trying to kind of actually go where people were and connecting with them. And so that allowed us to actually really bring in an incredibly diverse community to the project, which I will describe in a minute. And not only that, but also for some of the local people from the communities to actually mix with people that they don't mix with usually. So the project was based in a London area and also in the West Midlands, in deprived areas, socially deprived areas. And it consisted of 2 co-curation sessions and 4 arts-based sessions with artists. So the co-curation sessions are really important because they take on a co-production approach. So it's not like, here's your artworks, we're going to work from that, here's a project. It was really working with all the participants and being very culturally sensitive about the kind of artworks that could be brought there, the ones that they wanted to choose, the ones they wanted to work from. So really consulting as much as possible with people from very diverse communities, religions, experiences. And from these 2 co-curation sessions, actually selecting a number of artworks that people wanted to work for in the next 4 art-based sessions. Now, the art-based sessions were led by visual artists, storytellers, creative writers, and people produced not just artworks, but they produced poems, they produced stories. You know, the production of artwork was actually quite wide, which was very, very nice. But the skill sharing continued because what I did as an art therapist was I came in and I did some pre-project training and skill sharing, for instance, about why people might find groups difficult, the kind of reactions that people might have in groups if they don't feel that, if they feel that they're getting upset, what may make people upset emotionally, the sort of things that, you know, group skills that we could have. I also worked with everybody to use art-based processing as part of the work. So everybody who worked there was invited not just to provide art making or storytelling stuff, but also really use art to process their experience of the project. And we took photographs of this and we brought them up. So it was a kind of like including a reflective practice process that was art-based for everybody who participated in the project. And the feedback on that was really, really quite strong about how helpful it was to realize things about themselves, to realize things about the participants and all of it. So this thing about putting it in as kind of like part of the process and reflection was really, really useful. So all of this meant that we had a really strong mix of ethnicity and different kind of participants. But what I also did was to do evaluation, because I'm really keen on kind of like trying to kind of work out if what we think we do is actually what we're doing, if the outcome is what we want to do. In hospitals has really developed a strong ethos of working with evaluation as well. So that was really nice to kind of work together on this. And we got some really good results about what people felt they got from the project, about their engagement. We realized that most of the participants had attended between 3 and 6 sessions of the project, which for community-based projects was actually quite good. It meant that they found value and meaning in terms of going there. And what was really good as well is that some of the asylum seekers and migrants started to really use their library and continue to connect with their library after the project as well. So it kind of had a kind of continuation past the project. So I just wanted to just show you before I stop a couple of slides about what people did during that, just to sort of end with our service users production as well. And this was a message poem. So it was written from looking at this print from paintings in hospitals, and people were encouraged to kind of think about the story and about what you would say. And this person wrote, "I came to visit. The geese said no. I waited at the gate, but you were not home. I will try again tomorrow. Please tell the geese." And I find this incredibly moving, this message poem, because there is something about loss, about waiting, about sort of missing, that kind of is really reflective of some of the issues that the our participants had. And this was another poem that was a response to a painting that had been selected for that project, which was Late Summer Cosmos by Janaski. And it just goes like this: evening rolls in. Mist settles on the river below. A busy day behind me, tucked under gossamer blankets. I rest, I breathe. The call of the seagulls brings me back to the present. The scent of the flowers takes me back to the past, briefly, an aroma of a moment gone before, a time cut short. Earthy mushrooms remind me that I am grounded here in this place, right now. Beautiful fruit brings color and freshness. A hot drink to warm my soul. I rest, I breathe, home. And I'll stop share and I'll stop here.
Thank you, Val. I rest, I breathe, I'm home. And that picture of, tell the geese just does really resonate. And that use of poetry, prose and pictures is what brings a common language to us all the time. And I wish we had more time, but this really is a fireside chat of showing you, as the audience and the people involved, just who is working in this field and what they're doing, and some commonalities. So I'm going to now move us on to Christina to a similar artistic way with a different community and an even wider reach to collaboration. And Christina, sorry, please tell us who you are, because I don't want to silence your voice either, and the project, and maybe how we, yeah, that's it. Over to you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I feel really privileged to be on here with you all. I'm a big believer in all the work that you've been talking about is amazing. I'm a big believer in libraries. If it wasn't for the library, I wouldn't be writing here today. And I'm proud to say that I'm now a patron for the very library that I used to visit as a child, because my parents didn't have a lot of money, couldn't afford books. So we used to visit the library every week. And if it wasn't for that library, I wouldn't be writing today. So a big believer in those. So yeah, so I'm Christina Gabbitas. I'll try not to ramble on too much. I have to get a hook to get me off. So I'm a writer. I've been writing for over 13 years. I'm an honorary member of the NSPC Council. I have a small children's literature festivals charity, which concentrates on areas of deprivation, having festivals, making them free for small communities. But I have had my small writing business for over 13 years. And so I write to educate. I was more interested in factual information when I was a child at school. And I like to write about the world around us. So basically, I've written a number of books, worked with a number of organisations. So all my stories have educational elements about them. So I've just finished another story for the Aspergillosis Trust, which is something you might be interested in a bit later. But I've also written a story about a rare eye condition. But today, I'm going to be focusing and just letting you know what the work I've been doing surrounding county lines exploitation, knife crime and vaping. So basically, I was approached in 2019 by the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office to see if I could engage with children and young people on the topic of knife crime. That came off the back of a story that I wrote called Share Some Secrets, that encourages children to speak up about abuse. And that was published, I think this was 2015, and that's one of the best-selling titles in the NSPCC online shop. And I donate proceeds to Childline. So the ask came off the back of that. And whilst I did engage with children and young people on the topic of knife crime, I got them to write poetry. When I started researching further, I realised a lot of the time knives were involved, drugs were involved as well. So then I wrote a story called No More Knives or County Lines. So all my stories, these particular stories, they're very big stories. And as a child, I was more, I was a struggling reader, and I was more attuned to visual. I used to love listening and reading along, and that actually encouraged me to read more. So the No More Knives County Lines was created into an animation and a comic strip format story, which proved to be very successful in its delivery. I've delivered sessions into hundreds of primary schools. We think we shouldn't have to educate our children about being groomed and exploited, but we do, because it's happening. You know, I've been in places where children have been exploited in primaries and the whole families have had to move away. It's quite horrific. And so due to the success of that and delivery with the policing teams in that area, I then worked extensively with another policing team in North Yorkshire, extensively across North Yorkshire, in primaries and special schools, pupil referral units, through the power of storytelling. I'm a big believer in the power of storytelling for getting these messages across, and the impact is evident, the impact carries on. So I then was commissioned to write a second sequel story called Trapped in County Lines, which sees these 10 characters groomed and exploited once again. So in the first story, aged 10 to 16, they're groomed and exploited into county lines and realise the consequences of carrying knives, because one of the characters gets stabbed in the leg. So Trapped in County Lines is targeted at age 12 upwards, and that sees a fatality from a stabbing and explains within the story the element what cuckooing means and the drug debt and the debt bondage. Now, I was in a college yesterday delivering a session in Preston College in Lancashire. And what was interesting is the lecturer came up to me at the end and he said, look, he said, we've had lots of people come in and delivering on all these topics. He said, but I found yours the most engaging, the most simplistic and able to understand because of the comic strip story. It enables, it's like with anything, I think, it doesn't matter what your academic level is. I think if you're watching something, an animation or a story, if people watch TV, watch programs, they tend to, when you incorporate in a topic, it makes it more memorable. So therefore, you have more impact, more memorable impact. And with all of these stories, I love doing research, whatever topic that may be. So I interview ex-criminals, victims of exploitation, youth workers, different ranks of policing, because it's really important for me, because these stories are being delivered to the public, they have to be correct. And I think that is really important, and getting that message across. And some of the stories that I hear is just horrific. And what we found is, so I met with the Youth Commission. The best advice they gave me, I know I'm too old to be on TikTok, but they advised me to join TikTok. I thought, oh my goodness. Anyway, so if you do manage to have a look at my TikTok channel, what I do is I interview children, young people, teachers, to see what they've thought, think about the subject matter. I've spoken to parents of children who have been exploited into county lines. It's, you know, this is a national, actually an international problem, but a national problem. And I think that we need to do more to work together, and it's evident that working together really does have that impact. And we're all stronger together. And so the Trapped in County Lines has been really successful, and it was best advice from the Youth Commission. And unfortunately, that's where children and young people are hanging out. But I engaged with the school in 23, and they're still engaging with that particular post. So they're remembering why we went in there, what the topic was about. So, you know, the impact from the storytelling is immense. So I'm now working on The Missing Story, which is the next sequel in this series. Because at the end of my story, Trapped in County Lines, Luke, whose mum's away, they target him. It takes a bit of bait from some vapes, delivering some vapes. His house gets taken over, so his property is cuckooed, and he gets into the drug debt, the debt bondage element. And he goes missing at the end because he doesn't know what to do with himself. And children are going missing every day. And some of the time it's because of this reason. And I feel so passionate about it. It's horrific. So in this story that I'm writing, which will be, it's be launched in October, is going to explain to young people what's happened to Luke within this story. And I always say to them, all my characters are fictitious, but what you hear are all truths. Because of the research that I do, it's all true. There's a lot of truth within the stories, because this is happening, from children being set on fire to, it's just off the scale and horrific. And because of this, I decided, so these are paid commissions that have such positive impact, is that I decided to set up an initiative. Now, I did this voluntarily out of a passion, because I get calls from all over. And I wanted to get people working together. So I reached out to different police forces, from Essex Police to Wayburn and Somerset to Yorkshire to Lancashire, all over, youth workers, lived experience, to be judges on this initiative, where I get children and young people aged 12 to 21 to write about all that they understand to be encompassed in county lines exploitation and associated knife crime. Now, this is the most successful initiative that I've ever run. I was vilified at the outset, but I ignored that. I was sent abusive messages, but it's been so positive. So what I did when I sent all the poems, I chose the top. So they're asked to write poems or lyrics. So it's a poetry and lyrics. And I sent the top 40 to all the judges with no names, no areas, there was no nepotism. And the person that won was a young man called Alexandru Cocosilla, and English is his second language, which is brilliant, because lots of writing projects I do, girls seem to come out on top, but this is a guy, and it's called Shadows of Destiny, and it's absolutely amazing. He's a West Midlands police cadet. And he's done absolutely amazing. And as a result of that, of this initiative, I published a poetry book called Listen Up, which details at the end. Now, Listen Up they've got the top 40 poems in from the initiative, and I had poems and lyrics coming from all over the UK. Now, in this, there's lived experience as well. I think that's really important to share, because some children and young people don't feel they have a choice, and we have to understand why they think they don't have a choice. For instance, one of them is waking up with no food in the fridge. It's a really powerful message, and everybody should read it. So basically, this has been part funded by myself, and part funded by YMCA Lincolnshire, and it's been part funded by drug money. So when you see the police going in, knocking down doors, properties, getting the drugs and the money, this is been part funded by what they call a Section 27 fund, money seized from criminals from North Yorkshire Police. So it's back in the faces of the criminals, because they will stop at nothing. And I think through the power of all the stories that I write, the power of storytelling for educating, it's absolutely fantastic, and it's been evident that it actually works. And so much so that I've had demand. I've now seem to have a demand for the next initiative, which will be coupled with the missing story that's going to be launched around November time. And then I've got Youth Commission wanting to judge on this as well. So it's created a lot of positivity. It's got a lot of people talking, and it's done what I wanted it to on the tin, basically, the initiative. And I just think it's so important. And I think that the power of storytelling should never be overlooked, and I think it has been and does get overlooked, and the positivity, education that can bring into schools as well. And so I haven't showed you any of my slides, which I was going to show. Sorry, I got rambling on and I forgot about my slides, but I would like to show. Have I got time to show the slides? Because I'm not sure what I'm doing for time. How am I doing for time?
You got time to show us the slides, because I want people to see the young people's engagement with it. And whilst you're putting it up, I've watched the cartoons, and the idea of being absorbed into the young people's experience of coercive control. That's my language in it, because I'm a mental health nurse, so I can only, that's the only way, was palpable. I watched 12.5 minutes, and I was absolutely feeling what those young people were feeling in that awful space they were there. So the ability to inculcate empathy with this through your work, Christina, was
I'm trying to share this. I'm not very techy.
I'll do it.
We'll do it from here.
You do it from there. Yeah.
We'll do it from here. So we've got some slides of activity from Christina. So the first slide is up with the people in the high vis. Christina, can you see that?
Right. Okay. Yes, I can see that. So this is an instance. This is one of the. So if I get invited into by an area to a school, I contact the local policing team, because I know how useful it can be from an intelligence point of view, but also collaborative, in that the emergency services are there to help us, like our police, ambulance, fire, doctors, nurses, everybody. The police are there to help, working together in our communities for them. So this photograph is depicting turning their back on county lines. So that's why the children are all facing the wall and holding the comics up, turning their back on county lines. So that's a message I wanted to give. With primary age children, what I do is I like to collaborate with them, and we do class poems together, and they recite it. So in the actual session, I get them to recite the poem at the end of the session. It helps with that impact of storytelling of the poems. And also for any child who's really quiet, I'm a big believer in choral reading altogether. Everybody's included, feeling inclusive. So that was, you want to move on to the next slide? I think there was another slide at the beginning. I don't know what that one. This one here, it's a mix. So this is Alexandra Cocosilla that you can see with the beret on. He was a police cadet who won the initiative. And then a young lady called Grace from a school in Liverpool. And then another young lady from a school in York who took 3rd place, Baber Stokes, with Listen Up, which was inspiration for the actual poetry book itself. So I was invited to Tally-Ho at the West Midlands Police Headquarters, because the Chief Constable, the Police and Crime Commissioner, the High Sheriff, they all wanted to really big up the amount of work that went into them writing these poems, but to the collaborative effort that went on, and to give that recognition. And what they've done is absolutely amazing. You see this young man here with a Make a Difference award. So I was contacted by a parent who sent me a message for thanking me for going into their school, for educating the primary age children about what to do also if they found a knife. So in the session, I deal with that as well. So this young man won a bravery award because what he did is he found a zombie knife on his way to school. And his twin sister was about to pick it up. He stopped his twin sister from picking that knife up because he'd remembered what I'd said. And what his mum said was, she said she was absolutely amazed because he has ADHD and he struggles to concentrate, but he loves my comics and he loves what I did. And he remembered everything that I said. And because he did this, he contacted his parents, contacted the police, stayed with the knife, stopped his sister from picking it up. And then they came and they took the knife away. But he remembered everything. So he was given a bravery award for his efforts. So I think that it spoke volumes in that the message of the power of the storytelling, the message within it. Can we go into the next slide? Because I don't know what that is. I thought it's at the end one. I think the other slide that you had was I'd been into, I don't know if you got that one, where I went into another school. Again, it was about turning the back on county lines again. But it's evident within all the sessions, they identify with the characters and they're wanting to know what happens to the characters. So it makes it memorable. So this obviously is my last slide. My latest commission, Vaping Scars. I was contacted by Nuneaton and Bedworth Council to see if I could engage young people on the topic of illicit substance within vaping. Well, that research, there'll be so much more to be found out, as you will know, what vaping is actually doing to people. This one particular young girl, she was going to bed with a vape in her hand, waking up with a vape in her hand. She has popcorn lung, and that's without the illicit substance in. So this story addresses that. There's an animation of that too, and I'm starting to deliver that into schools as well. And as you will be aware, it is really important. I know the disposable vapes are being banned very soon, which is not soon enough for me. And I don't understand how it's been allowed to get out of hand as bad as it has, really. And that there's so much funding going into research from age 10 to 15, the effects of vaping. And I'm thinking, well, why wasn't enough more put into education rather than picking up the pieces afterwards? But that's just my opinion. But again, it's the power of storytelling for getting these educational messages across, speak volumes. So if you do want to work with me, I'll travel anywhere. I love my work. I love engaging with children and people. And I've helped to safeguard some children and young people, and that's really, really important. And getting the children and communities engaged, is a reason for setting up Listen Up is to get everybody talking about it, to communities to understand, there is a problem with children carrying knives, children and young people carrying knives. There are far too many fatalities, but you know what? There are far many children who are being groomed and exploited into delivering drugs county lines and having such a detrimental effect on the rest of their lives. I'll finish with the young man that I'm talking to at the moment through his mum. He's had to move from one end of the country to the other, to move away from all his family and communities, because the criminals are so clever and very evil. So sorry, I know I could ramble on forever. So
thank you. I wanted to end on that note of this is a national problem, and the children who have become engaged in this are across the country, and the people who are perpetrating this are in every field that we work in as well. So thank you. Like I say, this is a taster session, and so I'd like to thank Christina, Val, Jemma, Marie, and I'm Marion, and thanks Sarah. If you want to know more, there are links in the chat to enable you to follow up these people. If you want to get involved in this kind of work or share your work using creative health or creative means, creative education, activism, get in touch with me, because we have a webinar every other month. We have the exhibition launching on the 26th of June, which is challenging the imagery of nursing, a webinar on the 16th of July about that. Novel nurses who are writing novels, building on from what Christine's saying and the evidence base. around influencing how people think about health and what people do. Nurses are in every field here and working across communities. OTs are doing the same, art therapists the same. So professional boundaries that we used to have are gone. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you speakers. And we look forward to having another webinar in July.